I got to click to get the presentation going. Yeah, there we go. Oh, cool. So before we start, just a quick intro. I'm Jose from Delphi Labs. Some of you might know us from, so Delphi has 3 different divisions. We have research, where we do research on the space, and then we have venture fund, which is prop capital, and we have labs, where we build stuff. So labs started off actually as doing mechanism design for a bunch of different protocols that you might have heard of, like Aave and Compound, Synthetics, Axie Infinity, and that's kind of how we learned the ropes. And at some point we realized we'd built a really good team. We had a lot of views about how DeFi should be built, and we wanted to actually go and build stuff from scratch. So we kind of started becoming more like a protocol R&D lab. Yeah, there's a legal disclaimer before we start. These are ideas for things that we might build. There's no guarantee that we will build them like this or they'll work exactly as expected. And it's not an offer to buy or sell tokens. And also Mars is not trading, so please do not ape the random Mars token, because that's not us. And yeah, so cool. So Delphi Labs, there we go. So we started off building and contributing to protocols on Terra, most rest in peace, most notably Mars and Astroport. And so obviously after the collapse, we had a big sort of period of reflection where we went back to first principles and thought through, why does crypto matter? Like, why are we all here? Why are we building? What does the end game UX look like? And how can we contribute towards it, right? So in this talk, I want to kind of take you through that process for us. It's going to start with why we think crypto matters, and then what we think the end game UX looks like, how we think Mars can contribute towards it, and why we chose Cosmos. All right, so to start with, why crypto matters. So from our perspective, crypto is freedom tech disguised as a get-rich-quick scheme, right? And for most people, even some people in crypto, they don't see past the get-rich-quick part. But in our perspective, crypto exists to empower individuals against corporations and nation states and give them back control of their finances and eventually of their data, of their identity, of their social graph, right? And I think as globalization unwinds, not to get too much into the politics of it, but as globalization unwinds and states get more PvP, that will become increasingly important, and we're all going to be glad that we contributed to help build this. Yeah, and so, yeah, but the killer app, though, of crypto is undeniably speculation, right? And we have a complex about that in crypto, but I think there's nothing wrong with that for kind of 2 reasons. The first one is speculation is how all new tech gets funded, right? From canals to the railways to the internet, there's always speculative bubbles. If you read Carlota Perez's book, it's excellent on this. That's how it starts. And if it takes a few dog tokens to rebuild the global financial infrastructure, I'm okay with it. The second reason is that speculation is a much bigger use case than people normally give it credit for, right? We believe in a future where every asset will be tokenized, every single person is going to be an investor, and every asset is going to be tokenized, every single person is going to be an investor, and speculation is the way that we sort of allocate capital and attention to the narratives that we think are most important, right? And they're going to make the most difference. And from our perspective, like the trend is one way. We've already seen a proliferation of crypto tokens, right? From tokens representing governance rights to smart contracts, to JPEGs, dog tokens, membership tokens, real world asset linked tokens, all sorts. And we're just scratching the surface of that. So, and DeFi for us is the global, open, permissionless rails that this new financial system is going to run on. And from my perspective, it's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, and it's the core narrative and the core differentiating factor for me for crypto. All of the narratives, NFTs, Web3, feed into DeFi, and I think require DeFi to succeed for them to really succeed as well. So that's kind of why we focused on DeFi. And now going into what we think the end game DeFi UX looks like. So right now, DeFi is a fragmented experience, right? If you want to trade spot, you go to Uniswap or SushiSwap or something like that to use Ethereum examples or Osmosis. If you want to do lending and borrowing, you have to go to Aave and Compound. Then if you want to margin trade, maybe you're on GMX or on Perp. But all of these are fragmented experiences, fragmented LTVs, and this is not just like a front-end and UX aggregation issue. It's actually deeper than that. because the big thing that centralized exchanges do, in addition to bringing together all these different DeFi jobs to be done the users want to do under one UX, is also provide this cross-margin primitive, right, where you can have all your different positions cross-margined in one account. Whereas in crypto right now, you have to manage liquidation and margin thresholds across all your different positions, if you're doing leveraged yield farming, if you're doing perps, and it's not only a hassle, it's also very capital inefficient, right? So what do we think the solution to this is, and what does it look like? So if you rebundle DeFi, so if you create a UX for people to have like all their jobs to be done in DeFi, what are those jobs to be done? So obviously spot trading, which includes the large caps like Bitcoin and ETH, but also new tokens that people want to ape, right? Token distribution primitives like LBPs, so the equivalent of Binance Launchpad. That's important. Then there's obviously lending, there's margin trading, there's derivatives, especially perps, and which are arguably the crypto finance product with the most product market fit. But also, where this gets interesting is where you can integrate yield opportunities that actually aren't accessible in centralized exchanges, right? Because a rebundled DeFi experience can integrate all DeFi primitives, including LP tokens, including vaults, including staking, and include all of that into one sort of account, right? Or into one experience. So how does Mars facilitate this? So Mars introduces basically what we're calling a credit account, or a DeFi credit account, which we're calling the rover. And how this works is a user creates a rover, and then they can fund it, similar to how you would fund an account on a centralized exchange. From there, they're able to interact with a bunch of different DeFi protocols on leverage. And crucially, so that they'll be able to buy, like go long and short tokens, go long and short different yield opportunities, do leverage staking, leveraged LPing, all in sort of all with one margin threshold on the account. So what does this look like? So what you end up kind of having is this rebundled DeFi experience, right? Where from a simple UX, users can go in and interact with different whitelisted strategies and tokens. They can trade them on leverage while having the margin threshold on their account. Now, each of these sub-accounts is represented by an NFT, and users can have multiple sub-accounts. So they could have one with a different risk profile, one with a more degen risk profile. The crucial thing is you only have to manage one margin threshold on this credit account, and you can interact with all of DeFi from it. And like the really important thing to sort of understand here is, provided the chain is sufficiently fast, and there are chains on Cosmos, and with improvements to Tendermint, you can get it to that level, this can provide an experience that feels similar to a centralized exchange on all the key dimensions, in terms of speed, in terms of the leverage available, in terms of not getting wrecked on liquidations, all those key dimensions, while being non-custodial, decentralized, permissionless, and integrating with anything that exists in DeFi, right? So it's very powerful. And then the other cool thing is these credit accounts, these rovers, are represented as NFTs, which I think I'm curious to see what the community does with those. I think they could be an interesting identity primitive, right? Like these NFTs are going to expose an on-chain net worth, an on-chain P&L. You could do social trading based on this. You could fractionalize it and have asset management based on this. And they could also just represent kind of these on-chain artifacts, right? If you think of a legendary credit account that, a massive liquidation or something like that, or someone that held their ETH from ICO days and never sold it, these credit accounts will have, they'll represent a piece of on-chain history, and they'll have, I think, artifact value as well. So now the platform choice. So we kind of decided, we knew what the end game was, what we thought that the DeFi experience should be, and then we kind of went through and figured out where should we build this. And in order to understand kind of what went into that, it's important to understand our views on cross-chain. So I don't need to shill Cosmos to all of you, but basically there's kind of two views of the world as I see it. One is the monolithic view, that every single dApp is going to exist on a generalized execution environment like Solana or ETH. And then the other view is the multi-chain view, where effectively we're going to have more and more specialized app chains that connect asynchronously, right? And we very much believe in the latter, obviously, but we think it's a trade-off of basically composability versus specialization, right? And the benefits of specialization, the benefits of having your own app chain, I'm not going to go into it too much because everyone here understands it, but you get to control your own block space, so you don't get things like an NFT mint causing your costs to spike and your app to become unusable. And also, you get to customize consensus and do all the interesting things that we've heard from all the different dApps presenting here, right? Whether it's Osmosis' threshold encryption, whether it's Sayer Injective's on-chain order book, all the different things you can do when you can kind of customize your chain from the ground up. And what you give up is that synchronous native composability that you have on something like a Solana, right? And from our perspective, what we kind of realized is that that composability is actually not that important for the majority of apps. When you look at Solana's state, the majority doesn't touch each other, with the exception being DeFi, right? DeFi, you actually need that native synchronous composability, whether it's for rehypothecation, right, leveraging up on tokens, whether it's yield farming, or just having a solid leverage trading experience. You can't really be waiting for relayers for when you're trying to like top up your position and not get liquidated, right? And so these kind of beliefs lead us to this world of, I really like Sunny's sort of view on this of mesh security, right? Where you effectively have, you can see the app chains, like specialized app chains as sort of suburbs, and then you have main DeFi hubs that their economies will run on. So it's kind of like you deploy your app chain in the suburbs where you control your costs, living costs are low, and then there's high-speed rails that connect you to the DeFi hub, Osmosis being kind of the primary one, and your economies run on there. So in terms of what this looks like, so how should an app build if this is our view of the world, right? That there's going to be these DeFi hubs and then all these specialized app chains. And for us, the key thing is you want to have standalone deployments on each chain because you want to have that on each DeFi hub, because you want to have that synchronous composability, right? You want to be able to liquidate, to pay down your debt, to do leverage fast without having to wait for cross-chain contract calls. But also, you don't want to have fragmented liquidity, right? And that's really the key of kind of the Mars cross-chain design, is the idea that we want to be present on a bunch of these, like Mars should be present wherever there's demand for leverage, right? And it should be present there natively because leverage requires that. And so we need to do that while trying to not fragment liquidity. And so this is kind of the design that we came up with. So effectively, you can think of Mars as the first outpost will be deployed on Osmosis. That's already been announced. And the outpost is sort of a native SuperApp experience, right? So a native, kind of the UX you saw before is a teaser to that. It's a native synchronous SuperApp experience where you can deploy the credit account, have leverage trading, leveraged LPing, all of that. But it's connected to this hub, which effectively, the Mars hub will, you can think of it, one metaphor I use is sort of headquarters and branches, right? Banks or supermarkets, you have your branches where the stuff actually happens, and then you have your headquarters, which coordinates all the different branches, right? You wouldn't go to like Tesco headquarters and try and buy groceries. And that's the same thing with Mars. Nothing happens, no lending and borrowing happens on Mars Hub. What happens is Mars Hub governs all the outposts via interchain accounts, and shout out Larry who's pioneering that. It receives fees from all the outposts, so the fees flow up and get distributed to stakers. And then the last one, which is really cool, is this communication portion, where the Mars Hub acts as a coordination hub between outposts to ensure that liquidity acts as one. And what this basically means is just, if there's more demand for leverage on outpost B than on outpost A, Mars Hub will move liquidity from outpost B to outpost A, right? And so what you end up with is this really cool sort of liquidity network where Mars is present on all these outposts natively, and then the hub is like shuffling liquidity around dynamically to satisfy wherever the highest demand for leverage is. Yeah. So that's kind of the main kind of principles behind Mars. And now we have a little video to show you, to tease. Oh, one sec. Damn. Yeah, that's kind of the main, yeah, that goes through kind of the Mars architecture and how it works. And I hope that was clear. I'll be around to answer questions as well if anyone needs them. And then we have a video of the UX, which will hopefully get people pumped, just a little teaser video. All right. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for listening.